that nonsense. Everything that's happened in comedy since him has happened because of him, and he's still happening. Once again, I'm overwhelmed to welcome Peter Cook. The general election's only a few weeks away. How are you enjoying the television coverage?
Oh, I think I'm so excited. It's so enjoyable. I have such a wonderful time. It only comes about once every 4 years, which is depressing. But I think now it's on us. We should just enjoy it, because in a way it's different from any election we've ever had in the past. I mean, it is so exciting.
What do you think of all the technology and stuff on TV and the computers? Don't you miss the dear old days of Bob McKenzie? And...
Oh, the swingometer, yes. Well, it'd be a bit difficult with 3 parties, wouldn't it, to get that machine swinging. I rather like the new technology, and it goes on for longer. The thing I really enjoy about election night is staying up for ever and ever and ever. In fact, I missed the last election, but luckily I videoed it. And nobody told me the results, so I was able to enjoy the tension when I got back from Marbella.
There's a good chance that the results will take a long time this year, because it may be a hung parliament. Do you know what a hung parliament is?
Well, I prefer to call it a balanced parliament, because this is going to be a thoughtful election, as David Owen keeps telling us. And he is a very well balanced politician.
What about opinion polls? Do you take any notice of them?
Yeah, I do. I haven't been asked, ever. I've been wandering up and down Hampstead, day and night, as a floating voter. I'm a guppy.
What's a guppy?
Guppy? Guppy is, well, I'm a guppy. It's a sort of gloomy, useless, pessimistic prat. We're quite a group, but nobody's asked me a thing.
Well, you once were famous for formulating a moustache theory of power. Could you take us a brief canter through that theory?
Well, I began with my moustache mode of life with Macmillan, and I felt that the moustache, without the moustache, Macmillan couldn't have done anything. And I think the moustache just enables you to act powerfully. And for example, in Whoops Apocalypse, I played a mad Prime Minister. And I think it gives you the capacity to invade places. I mean, think of all the really good invaders. They've all had moustaches on the whole. And in fact, Eden straight into Suez with his moustache. Hitler, a fairly consummate aggressor. And some say that Maggie is a triumph of the depilator's art. But in the interest of balance, so is David Owen, so is David Steele, and of course, Neil.
Ginger moustache and Neil.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's done very well so far.
How would you sort out MI5?
Oh.
Well, given the power to do so, I mean, what is...
Well, I'm privy to a little bit of information which I should probably pass on to you and the viewing audience.
Yeah.
But, you know Mike Oldfield, the Tubular Bells person?
Yeah.
He was a spy. And if you play Tubular Bells backwards, you get the locations of all our missile emplacements and everything.
So it wasn't...
And all the missiles are in fact dressed by Bruce Oldfield. Couturier to royalty.
You were at Cambridge, so you had, one of the qualifications for being a British spy, because all British spies have been to Cambridge. I think it's one of the very good thing about British spies. They're very well educated. Were you approached in Cambridge? As a
I was approached, but I suppose that's one of the things you have to do first to qualify, isn't it? But no, I was never asked at all. How do you apply to be a spy? Actually, about 8 weeks ago, I tried to ring the Kremlin. It is very hard. You ring up International Directory Inquiries and say, could you give me the Kremlin's number, please? And instead of giving you the number, it's for what reason? I say, well, none of your business. In any case, you can listen into the conversation when I get through. It took about 4 hours to get the Kremlin's number, and then there was nobody there.
What were you going to tell them if you got through?
I wished to defect.
You defected before, didn't you?
I defected in East Berlin, yes, when I was a student. I got on the underground and fell asleep and woke up in East Germany. And I got out of this underground station in East Germany, and there was this great gummy store with a lot of cardboard hats and cardboard shoes and horrible products, and lots of people queuing for it. And I sort of peered in the window, and the police came over and said, "What are you doing here?" in German. And I said, being a stupid little git, I said, "I wish to defect to the East because we cannot get these wonderful cardboard hats and beautiful cardboard shoes and wonderful bits of string to keep your trousers up. And I would like to enjoy the freedom of East Berlin." And I must have been very annoying indeed, and they took me off to prison and put me in a cell. But this didn't stop me. And I said, "Oh, this is so much nicer than our prisons. Ours are so crowded and people play with their transistors all the time."
Could you have survived in jail without television?
No, I don't think so. Well, I don't think so. I rely entirely on television to breathe and live.
Yeah. Somebody once said there are two kinds of human being. There are those who, when they walk into a room, turn the set off, and there are those who, when they walk into a room, turn the set on. And you're one of the second kind.
I leave it on in all rooms. And if I go to a dinner party, I'm really hankering to see what is on the telly. There's so much wonderful stuff on television.
Which of the programs you can't live without? Let's whittle it down to the really great ones. What about the old stuff, the old American series? You're an Ironside fan, aren't you?
I like Ironside. I think Raymond Burr had to work too hard on Ironside because he's in the wheelchair, but he had to do all this stuff, and he's too big a star, I think, to have to do all that sort of stunt work. And I devised a program for him called A Man Called Bedside, in which Raymond Burr just lies in bed, and Jack Lord of Hawaii 5-0 rushes off and does all the physical stuff.
We've got all-night television now. What do you think should be on in the early hours? What do you want to watch?
Oh, lots of very ancient programs.
What about evangelists? Do you think we've got enough of those?
Did you ever see Jim Baker and his lovely wife, Tammy?
I watched them every time I was in the US. I thought they were wonderful.
But the extraordinary thing about America is they can get a man on the moon, but they can't make a decent wig. And there he is, healing people. He's healing these people, and this toop. You know perfectly well that if miracles could happen, at least he'd have a better wig than that.
Couldn't it? It's alive, that thing.
The living wig. Yeah, I like all those evangelical programs.
Have you got a video?
Oh yes, I've got a very good video, and I've stored so many things. It's wonderful to wake up at 4 in the morning, put in anything at random, and have Newsnight from 1979. Yes. I just record masses of stuff.
You've mastered the technology then?
No, that's why I have masses of stuff. It took me about a year to work out how to record something that I wasn't watching.
Yeah.
And I have to be there, though. I can't do it in my absence. I can cook a chicken by remote control, but I can't do that.
Yeah. I've always found that the next model, the one after the one I've got, is the one that can really do things. Always being outdistanced by the technology.
Well, there's one out now which they keep advertising, which says that all you have to do is select your program from the Radio Times or TV Times and point at the program or some strange little code like you get in supermarkets, and then you point the Radio Times at the video recorder and it records everything. I think that's what the ad implies. It's very difficult, isn't it? I feel a bit of a prat kneeling in front of your video recorder, going to questions. I think voice activated would be the thing.
Yeah.
Just the Newsnight, the late film, and anything raunchy you happen to see.
Do you sometimes find the commercials on TV more interesting than the programs?
Yeah, I like them. I've gone off all... the ads I don't like at the moment, these men who jump up in the air at the end of it.
Yeah.
After a Cockney song. I can't stand those do-it-all people who jump in the air. Quick fitters all jumping in the air.
some of them are very athletic. You like that Steve Cram advertisement?
Yeah, I like that. I think you could have some rather good negative sort of endorsements. I mean, there's Cram associated with the breakfast cereal. Now, suppose Klaus Barbie, with guaranteed TV coverage for the first 2 days in any case, were to insist on wearing Nike shoes and putting them up on the table. How much would that be worth to Adidas? I don't know. I mean, if Ian Paisley was always clothed in Benetton, would Benetton pay Paisley not to wear their stuff? I don't know.
You may be onto something here. You could be onto
I think so.
a whole new industry.
But Richard Nixon would be very good for Toby Bitter, wouldn't he? Well, client you can trust.
Speaking of commercials, this is a very serious question, this. What about the AIDS commercials for safe sex? What do you think of those?
I watched the two AIDS things and that iceberg implying you got it underwater 9/10 of the time. I thought it was confusing. I think you might as well have had Kenny Williams just saying, "No, stop messing about." That's the message on the whole, isn't it?
I couldn't understand that one either. I thought it was just telling you not to have a one-night stand with an iceberg.
I tried to cut down on that, I must say.
It's a big subject, so we're going to get back to it. At the moment, we've got a break coming up, so for now, stick around. I have to say, for now, thank you very much, Peter Cook. Peter Cook will be staying on during the break, after which we'll be joined by Australian star who did for Toast. He gave her a name, Edna, and his name is Barry Humphries. Thanks to our intimate contact with Fleet Street, this program is able to reveal that the news of the world next Sunday will blow the Barry Humphries scandal wide open. They will reveal that macho Australian superstar Barry Humphries is in fact a Russian spy and has been a Russian spy ever since he was a prefect at school in Australia. The news of the world will reveal that schoolboy Humphries had questionable sexual tendencies. Humphries came to England and joined MI5, whose makeup experts enabled him to penetrate the BBC and compare That's Life for an entire year without anybody noticing the difference. But the news of the world will prove that Humphries' boldest coup was yet to come. Dressed as a woman and calling himself Edna Everidge, the double agent Humphries penetrated the inner circles of the establishment. Humphries was able to tell the Russians that the Prince of Wales, in a further search for spiritual illumination, was going around wearing a light fitting for a hat. The Queen suspected something was wrong with her new friend Edna, even though she could not put her finger on it. His cover-blown ex-triple bypass agent Barry Humphries now lives in sadly reduced circumstances. All he asks is to avoid publicity. And that is why he's here tonight, to beg the simple right of an ordinary citizen, to be left alone. Peter unleashed Dame Edna on an unsuspecting public. Was he a hit right from the start?
No, not really. I think Edna began her London, certainly her British career, as a dismal failure. I think Peter, so skilled in divining talent where it might not otherwise be apparent, met me many years ago when I was playing an undertaker in Oliver, which was a musical version of Oliver Twist. No one thought it would run. It's still running somewhere. He was in Beyond the Fringe, I was in Oliver. We were neighbours in the West End. And someone gave him an early gramophone record of mine made in Australia. I don't think they even call them gramophone records anymore. And he thought that I had promise. And a couple of years later, he started a satirical nightclub in Soho called The Establishment. It was the smart place to go. And a lot of very gifted people did Harold Macmillan impersonations there, amongst other things. And he booked me to go on there and do my Aussie monologues, one of whom, of course, was Edna. And nobody laughed at all. Mm. I remember on the first night, the discerning audience were very quick to recognise my absence of talent, and all adjourned to the bar, except for Bamba Gascoigne. Yes? That is a real name for a real person. He was then the drama critic for The Spectator, and he alone stayed and watched the show. He was sitting at a small round table about 3 feet from me and could see that I hadn't shaved my legs. So that was it. I thought, I'll never do these Australian characters in London ever again, even though Peter Cook thinks they're funny.
But what do they think of you in Australia?
Well, you just have to just stumble, you know, for them to trample you to death in my wonderful sun-bronzed homeland. And I remember once, well, every now and then they have a campaign against me, let's be frank. It's hard to believe in England that this could happen, but my wife presented me with a small son 6 years ago, and I took him home to see my mother in a Melbourne suburb. We looked in the window of the sunroom where my mother sat, seeming to listen to a transistor radio. I said, "Here is Oscar," you know. My mother said, "Shh, shh, listen to this." She said, "This is what they think of you, Barry." And a disc jockey called Patrick Tennyson, they're all named after poets in Australia, was interviewing housewives about how bad I was for Australia. And a woman was saying, "Well, I agree with you, Patrick. I've never seen Brian Humphries' shows, but I'm sure he gives a very bad image of Australia, and that's why English migrants aren't coming here." And my mother looked up, not at our son. She said, "That's what they think of you, Barry. That's what they think of you." I couldn't get a word in edgeways, so I went to another room and telephoned the radio station as Edna. I got through immediately onto the programme, and I said, "Hello, Patrick, it's Dame Edna here. I've just been listening to your show, and I heartily agree with you. Barry Humphries is a passé entertainer. He never was funny, in my opinion, and I happen to know his mother agrees with me." The mother turned off the set and devoted her attention to her grandson.
Peter was not only responsible for unleashing Edna on the British public, but also through Private Eye, Barry Mackenzie, wasn't he? Yeah. What happened to Barry? How did Barry start?
You see, in spite of Edna's failure at the establishment, Peter still had this mad faith in my ability. He said, "One of your recorded sketches is about an Australian in Earl's Court. We all used to live there. I mean, now it's South African puffs, I think, live in Earl's Court. But in the old days it was called Kangaroo Valley. I think one dentist established himself there and all the Australians flocked there. And he said, this character who's wandering around Earl's Court and drinking a lot of Foster's lager, which was a sort of beverage you could only get at one off licence, I think, and one pub. He said, that character's got potential. Why don't you do a comic strip about him?
Tell me more about the things Barry said. Which ones did you actually make up? Because some of the famous ones, like pointing Percy at the porcelain, was that Australian folklore, or did you make it? I can't
remember anymore. I might have heard it once. Yeah. I certainly did it more than once. But, of course, in a comic strip, if you want to teach the reader a new form of language, a new usage, you have to keep repeating yourself. I liked the word chunder very much, which was Barry Mackenzie's for being sick, you know, sort of enjoying oneself in reverse, as it were. There were various explanations about the origins of the word chunder. It was suggested it might have meant watch under. It might have been something that you shouted if you were on a boat.
That's what I heard.
Perhaps even a convict ship. That's the one I prefer to subscribe to, but I had to keep repeating the word to teach the readers about chundering, which meant Barry Mackenzie had to be sick a lot. He was sick in almost every episode. It's surprising that beer ever took off, isn't it?
Yeah, unusual experiences, though, with, who is it, Mr. Gort, I remember.
Yes, he went to a suburb of London called Rickmansworth in order to meet a family that they'd sent fat to during the war. I remember in Australia, you're too young to remember this, Clive, but a lot of houses in Australia during the Second World War were fat for Britain depots. And people on Sundays used to save the dripping from the roast, string and all, and little chips of roast potatoes, and leave them in a tin outside someone's house. And this would be shipped off, you see, to the ponds. Fortunately for you, most of it got torpedoed by the Japanese. So there's a lot of Australian dripping at the bottom of the Pacific. But Barry insisted on going to see this Rickmansworth family, the head of which was played by the late Dennis Price, a distinguished star of Kind Hearts and Coronets, by then fallen upon more difficult days. And he played the part of Ronald Gort, who invited Barry Mackenzie into his study and then put a schoolboy's hat on his head and spilt the ink. And he said, "Oh, Mr. Mackenzie, look, I've been naughty. You'd better punish me." And bent over, offering Barry Mackenzie a running shoe of some kind. A fanciful incident which, of course, could never happen, as you know, in real life.
Some people in rapidly changing the subject here. Some people in Australia suggest that Barry Mackenzie and Les Patterson and so on are holding back Australia's image abroad.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything to this, in your opinion?
Well, it's difficult. I think, really, perhaps they are. But that was my intention, after all. No. It's odd, isn't it, that people like John Cleese, who make wonderful comedies about bad service in British hotels, never get rapped over the knuckles. But in Australia, you just have to make a few little jokes about our more endearing faults to be accused of treachery. Indeed, pilloried as a traitor.
What about, we've heard a lot about Edna's new talk show. Why has she decided to turn her hand to this new art form?
Well, Dame Edna's been off the television for a long time, and indeed she's not done a West End stage show for over 5 years. So she's staging a comeback. And Edna feels that her time has come. And what, of course, she wants are very high-powered guests. So invitations have been into the Vatican, the White House. The difficulty is, of course, that half the world has never heard of Edna, and the rest are too scared to go on her show. So she may well end up with rejects from Terry Wogan. But we don't think so. The idea, of course, is to have a comfortable chair for the guests to sit in, which is at the same time rather threatening. It ought to tilt back a bit, I think. And perhaps it ought to indeed be electrified. We thought of calling the show Dame Edna's Hot Seat, and perhaps even having a guest sitting in a chair which could eject them if they weren't very entertaining. Or we could call it Mouth to Mouth, or Dame Edna Sticks Her Nose into Barry Manilow's Business Tonight. But she's looking forward to it, and I, as her manager, I'm a little nervous, but I think she'll do pretty well. Might be a series.
She's got a very...
It is a series.
She's got a very extensive wardrobe, and you go shopping for her. Is that a bizarre experience?
Well, the only reason I shop for Dame Edna is that I'm the same size. Sometimes I have to go into shops which sell ladies' clothes and say, I need a pair of shoes for my wife whose feet are roughly my size. And the girl at Selfridges says, "Don't worry, love." She said, "All the boys buy their drag in." But now, of course, she's a megastar. Things get made for her, you know. It's a different life for the dame. She's changed over the years. She used to be an ordinary Melbourne housewife with unshaved legs and a twin set, you know. Not unlike the Prime Minister of England.
Your taste in choosing Edna's clothes is impeccable, and I might say, what a lot of people have said, your taste in choosing your own clothes is impeccable. Does Barry Humphries give a lot of thought to clothes, to appearance, to image?
I quite like dressing up, you know. Ever since I had to approach bank managers, I decided it was as well to look like. But yes, I do. I sort of try to look respectable. And as you know, no comic is really respectable. But I like to give that impression. I'm also, because I come from Melbourne, which is, as John Betjeman says, Cheltenham in the jungle, or it's a bit like Wembley, or as Jonathan Miller said, an overheated Manchester. I am, in a way, a kind of typical middle-class smart ass.
Peter, your clothes sending us a message. What are those trainer shoes telling us?
Nothing. These are putting out a very, very strong sexual message. Is it that camera? You know what I mean, dear? She'll understand. These are very, very cheap shoes indeed.
You're a connoisseur of paintings and other objets d'art. Do people live in fear of your judgment? Do they tremble when your gimlet eye approaches?
They might. I remember once I was invited to a New Year's Eve party in Australia, and I knocked on the door, and I heard a lot of noise before they opened it, and I came in and there were no pictures on the wall at all. They were just pallid rectangles where pictures had been, and hooks. And I realised perhaps that they'd been removed. The fear that I thought them kitsch or something. It made me very embarrassed because it suggested I might have been a snob of some kind, which in fact I'm not, or I certainly wouldn't be on this show. But as I left, I opened the wrong cupboard and an avalanche of paintings fell out of nice Australian landscapes and things, but they thought if they showed pictures of trees and sunsets, I wouldn't care for them. In fact, they're the sorts of things that I really like. I don't like abstract pictures a bit.
Is that what you paint? You're a painter yourself?
Yes, I'm an amateur painter. In fact, I wanted to be a painter and might well return to it.
Do your paintings fetch high prices now?
No. In fact, even when I give them to people, they say, oh, no, please. But they're quite good, my pictures, I insist. I paint them on holidays of picturesque scenes, of lakes, and well, they're very pretty, these pictures. But they're not a bit like the things I collect. In fact, if an art dealer offered me one of my own paintings, I'd never speak to him again.
You like museums, don't you?
I do, especially like museums.
I think you were on record as having said once you'd like to be a museum attendant.
I would. I think when the bottom falls out of show business for me, I would like to be an attendant in a remote suburb, in a museum in a remote suburb of Brussels. A museum dedicated to the works of a forgotten Belgian artist. A museum not even mentioned in the guidebooks. A museum never visited. I just sit there and I take up smoking again. That way, you know how museums... And that would be a peaceful life.
Have you got any secret ambitions like that, Peter?
No, not ambitions. I'm trying to think of a way to be lazier than I am at the moment. Really hard to...
You like zoos, don't you? You want to be a zoo?
Well, I like going to zoos. I had a good time and went to the Melbourne Zoo.
That's a beautiful zoo.
Very nice indeed. It's a large amount of space for the animals, and I got lured into the duck-bill platypus place, which I've seen them before, but I thought I'd better see them again, these duck-bill platypi.
There's a platypus in the London Zoo which gives a very bad impression of Australian platypuses, by the way.
It is.
It
brings shame on
It's always
the Australasian platypi.
However, sorry.
So we went into this great platypus place, and there's a huge tank of water and alarming signs up on the wall saying, "You are now entering the silent world of the platypus. Be completely quiet." With other signs saying, "Shh, on no account disturb the peace of the platypus." And this huge tank of water, there's two old ladies peering at this tank. One saying, "Can you see it? Shh." They're whispering very loudly to each other, and they stared at this tank. There was nothing in the tank at all. They were looking at water for about 10 minutes, as indeed was I. With my girlfriend, I was saying, about to come up with this bullshit about they're masters of disguise. Anyway, the old ladies cleared off, and there's a sudden shattering shout from the platypus attendant who barreled in through the door saying, "All out! All out! Closing down!" What about the piece of the platypus? He said, "They're not here." And he opened a trap door and pushed them through with a stick. And they're in another tank. And they went up and down twice. He said, "That's enough, out you go." Now, his job is a bit too active, but I wouldn't mind supervising him. Or possibly looking after the koalas, who are the laziest creatures I've ever seen.
But they're actually quite fun to hold, koala. Have you held a koala?
Yes, a friend of mine has too, and they bit off his nipple. They thought he was a eucalyptus tree.
Did they shoot the koala afterwards?
No, they wouldn't be allowed. They shot him, though. It never healed. Nipples never heal. But apparently you've got to handle them pretty carefully. They are also incontinent. And it's, you know, it does smell like eucalyptus. You could inhale them. They're good for a cold.
The platypus is not a loyal pet. Very, very fickle.
If you've got a bad cold and get one to sit on your face, it's a miracle. A miracle cure, the marsupial inhalation.
That's true, yeah.
Well, I'm sure the audience will be dreaming of marsupial mud packs all night, but that's where we have to leave it. We've run out of time. So I have to say thank you very much, Barry Humphries. And thank you very much, Peter Cook. We could talk on, but we've run out of time for anything except one late-night news flash. Our news desk has learned that MI5 has given 10 Downing Street a top-secret report which suggests, through painstaking interpretation of the photographic evidence, that the Arabs are at last running out of oil.